Friday night under the lights at Empower Field at Mile High. Preseason week 2. We've got the Green Bay Packers traveling to take on the Denver Broncos. And honestly, the central tactical question for this preview isn't about your standard regular season power ratings or some generic team momentum. Nope. Tonight, it's all about quarterback processing, offensive line communication, and exactly what happens to the entire structure of the game the second that first wave of substitutions hits the field. So here is our tactical roadmap for this explainer. 1. The Mile High context. 2. Tactical blueprints. 3. Three defining duels. 4. Situational football. 5. Live cues and game states. And finally, number 6, the final verdict. Let's just dive right in.
All right, part 1, the Mile High context.
Listen, when we're evaluating a preseason fixture, context literally dictates everything. The 2025 baseline for both of these squads is undoubtedly strong, right? Denver finished as the AFC's #1 seed at 14-3, and Green Bay's coming off a solid playoff appearance of their own. But let's be real, historical power ratings do not win preseason games. What actually matters right now is who is taking snaps. And we have one massive, verified storyline that is shifting the entire gravity of the first quarter, and that is Bo Nix. He was held out of the preseason opener specifically for this exact game, and Nix himself stated he feels normal and without limitations heading into his scheduled debut. Getting a starting caliber quarterback focused, intentional reps, that completely changes the early game dynamic. His confirmed availability is the primary variable that tilts the early advantage toward Denver, making the Broncos' opening sequence the absolute most meaningful stretch of football we're going to see all night.
Moving on to Section 2. Tactical blueprints and formations.
So, before the heavy rotation begins and things get a little chaotic, what baseline identities are we actually expecting to see deployed out there? Well, take a look at this number, 0.23. That was Green Bay's expected points added, or EPA, per pass last season. Basically, it's a metric showing how many points a single play adds to the team's expected final score. It's a wildly strong efficiency signal driven by motion, condensed receiver alignments, and play auction. Against Denver, you can bet the Packers are going to use that exact same motion to create defined reads and catch-and-run opportunities. On the flip side, Denver's defensive blueprint relies heavily on disguised pressure. They're going to show you late safety movement and try to bring the heat without actually sending an extra blitzing defender. The absolutely crucial point here is the quarterback's decision tree. If Denver creates quick four-man pressure, Green Bay's quarterbacks simply have to take the underneath completion immediately. Do not try to manufacture a late middle-of-the-field throw into a totally disrupted pocket.
Which brings us to Section 3. 3 defining positional duels.
So how do those macro concepts actually play out under the lights? Duel number 1 is Bo Nix's processing speed going up against Green Bay's coverage shell. Green Bay is likely going to show 2 high safety looks to cap any immediate explosive throws, and then they'll rotate late, or they'll use simulated pressures, where they show a blitz pre-snap but then drop defenders back into coverage, just to make the quarterback completely reset his eyes. The true test for Nix tonight isn't just his raw completion percentage in a vacuum, it's how efficiently he handles that post-snap safety rotation. Can he beat Green Bay's simulated pressure with quick, on-schedule throws? Can he use his running backs and tight ends to force Green Bay's cornerbacks to tackle in open space?
Now, duel number 2 completely flips the script. We're looking at Green Bay's quarterback rotation and their traveling offensive line going against Denver's pass rush. Denver's defensive front wants to heavily disguise whether their edge defenders are dropping into coverage or rushing the passer. Green Bay absolutely has to protect the interior of their play-action concepts. The proof of Green Bay's success tonight won't be one flashy highlight reel deep ball. It's going to be repeatable, early down protection. If Denver's defensive line manages to disrupt the pocket rapidly using only 4 rushers, well, their secondary stays structurally sound, and that spells major trouble for Green Bay's backup signal callers.
And then we have duel number 3, which is just a pure old-school battle in the trenches. Denver's offensive line against Green Bay's defensive front. For Denver, success here is entirely about interior stunt recognition. Can they prevent the kind of interior penetration that absolutely ruins bootlegs and throws off all the route timing? For Green Bay, their edge rushers simply have to set the edge and compress the pocket on passing downs. Keep an eye on the individual technique out there tonight. If you see a guard failing to pass off a defensive twist or a tackle just getting beaten cleanly around the corner, that is a massive indicator of which rotational unit is ultimately going to collapse in the second half.
Let's jump to Section 4, situational football and territory.
Preseason football isn't typically decided by whoever racks up the most total yards. It's won and lost in high-leverage situations. We're talking third downs, the red zone, and the hidden yardage of field position. First up, we need to clearly define the metrics. An explosive play is an offensive run of at least 15 yards or a pass of at least 20 yards. Green Bay has a genuinely high ceiling for generating these as long as their line holds up. But let's say a shallow crosser turns into a 20-yard gain just because of a missed tackle.
Yeah, that's a huge explosive play warning sign for Denver's defense, and it highlights exactly why leverage and first contact tackling discipline are absolutely paramount.
Take a look at this specific operational threshold right here, 40%. Gaining 40% of the required yardage on first down is the magic number. Why? Because it preserves run-pass ambiguity. If an offense is sitting in 2nd and 6, the defense still has to respect the entire playbook. But if you have a stuffed run or a pressured check down, that pushes the offense straight toward 3rd and long. And in the preseason, where backup offensive line communication is about as reliable as a coin flip, living in 3rd and long is an absolute recipe for disaster.
Finishing drives is the other absolutely critical swing variable. Just look back at their matchup in December 2025. Green Bay actually averaged more yards per play, yet Denver won that game 34-26. Why? Because Denver was a flawless 4-for-4 in the red zone, while Green Bay was 1-for-4. Field compression drastically raises the value of a functional run game and mistake-free football. We also expect elevated turnover variance tonight, for sure, but you have to separate the noise from the signal. A randomly tipped interception? That's noisy. But a strip sack allowed because a backup tackle missed the exact same protection call twice, now that is highly actionable, game-breaking volatility.
All right, Section 5, Live Cues and Game States.
So how do we process all of this tactical data in real time? Think of this as your ultimate watch guide for Friday night. For the first 30 minutes, you need a chronological checklist. Step 1, objectively grade the first 3 non-short field possessions for each team. Are they sustaining drives? Are they moving the chains? Step 2, track the pressure arriving before Bo Nix even reaches his viable first read. Don't just stare at the sack totals, look for actual disruption of the play's timing. Step 3, monitor the reserve offensive line communication. The very second the first wave of substitutions hits, the level of play will shift. Whichever unit handles the opponent's defensive stunts better is going to seize the momentum.
From there, we can map out 3 distinct game states. If Denver leads early, they've got to preserve it with efficient early down runs and 4-man pressure that keeps their coverage numbers totally intact. If Green Bay takes an early lead, they should relentlessly attack leverage on first down and force Denver's backup quarterbacks to throw into disguised rotating coverages. And what if it's a tight one-score game deep into the 4th quarter? You got to favor the team whose active quarterback has successfully avoided pressure and whose reserve line is communicating cleanly. In late-game preseason scenarios, things like clean punting operations, exchange security, and kickoff lane discipline will almost always outweigh the team's historical talent rating.
Finally, Section 6, the final model verdict.
Let's bring this whole shebang together. Where does all this tactical evidence actually lead us? Well, the analytical model projects a remarkably tight contest. Denver Broncos 22.7, Green Bay Packers 21.3. Or, rounded off, a 23-21 victory for Denver. The model estimates a razor-thin 51.4% win probability for Denver compared to Green Bay's 48.5%. This slight edge heavily weighs the verified early usage of Bo Nix and that unique home field setting at altitude. If Nix executes on schedule and Denver generates pressure without blitzing, they hit their projection. But if Green Bay's lines protect the play action effectively and their playmakers turn those underneath routes into massive yards after the catch, the Packers have a highly credible path to pull off an upset here.
But before we wrap up this explainer, we absolutely must acknowledge the limitations of the data. Preseason error bands are massive, guys, roughly 10 points per team. Outside of Bo Nix's intent to play, the rotational snap counts for both rosters remain completely unverified, and literally a single backup offensive line substitution can completely flip the math of the game. Also note, this model assumes regulation play only. No overtime is projected here. The pregame projection is merely the starting line, so keep your eyes heavily focused on the trenches during those crucial early substitutions. Will the backup units execute the fundamentals, or will glaring miscommunications dictate the night? And perhaps the biggest question of all to leave you with, if Bo Nix carves up a complex Green Bay shell tonight, are we looking at a legitimate dark horse contender in the AFC West, or is this just a preseason mirage?